When we think of sacred birds from mythos and religions, those birds are usually graceful. Easy example would be peacocks, which are considered sacred in multiple mythos and religions. Cranes are considered sacred in multiple East Asian cultures, and those are also arguably graceful. Though some sacred birds are not exactly graceful, perhaps even the opposite end of the spectrum. African sacred ibis would be an example. While it's not exactly gruesome, I'm quite sure someone would find them quite scary. But this one bird, the topic of this video, is not exactly graceful, not exactly creepy, not exactly cool, but it is definitely sacred in some mythos and religions. Well, at least I know it is in one religion. This is a hoopoe, also pronounced hoopoe in some dialect, and this is not even a rare bird. So, let me bring up the question. What exactly is hoopoe? Hoopoe is a real bird. I know that might be a silly statement for some of you, but sometimes taxonomy and common names can be quite, let's just say, baffling. Hence, I just want to make it clear. Now, the taxonomy starts to be quite difficult. Some place them in the Coraciformes order, together with kingfishers and bee-eaters. Meanwhile, some place them in the Bucerotiformes order, together with the hornbills. At some point, they are classified in their own order, Upupiformes. I wouldn't say there is any conclusive answer to where they should be put into, so I'm just gonna use the one stated by the IOC World Bird List, which would be Bucerotiformes. Hoopoe is classified in its own family, Upupidae. Oh, by the way, there is another closely related group called wood hoopoe in the same order, but those belongs to a different family, and they don't look similar, so I don't think anyone would confuse the two groups. But anyway, there is only one genus of hoopoe, or at least as far as I know, which is Upupa. Now, the question of how many species are in this genus might be quite difficult to answer. Some say there's only one extant species, which is Upupa epops. Some consider there to be two extant species. The other one would be Upupa marginata, while some say there are three. Another one would be Upupa africana, which would be African hoopoe, if those are separated from the Eurasian hoopoe. Otherwise, the African and Eurasian hoopoe are considered one single species, which is the Upupa epops, also known as common hoopoe. Meanwhile, Upupa marginata is endemic to Madagascar Island. There was another species, Upupa antaios, from the St. Helena Island, but those went extinct around 5 centuries ago. Antaios is the son of Gaia, quite famous for being the 11th labor that Heracles, aka Hercules, would overcome. They are called antaios because they are giants among the known hoopoe species. Oh, by the way, Upupa is how hoopoes are called in Latin, while epops is how they are called in Greek. In my country, they are called hut-hut, and I believe they are also called hut-hut in many Islamic or Arabic countries. All of these names are onomatopoeia because they make an up sound, or hut-hut sound. Well, technically hut-hut-hut, I suppose, like this. And now, about Upupa marginata. First of all, I'm not sure why they got that name. Marginata means marginated, edge, or something like that. And I simply couldn't think of the reason why they would be called that way. And second of all, while some are still unsure about raising them to a species level, they do have a significantly different call compared to Upupa epops, like this. They are not even doing the up sound. When talking about animals that vocalize a lot, having different kind of calls from other species is definitely a big deal. I'll give you the simplified logic. Think of it like this. You need to communicate to find a mate. If you cannot communicate with something, that is most likely not a potential mate. That creates a reproductive barrier. That means no reproduction between the two. The one with up sound will seek others that also make up sound. Meanwhile, the whatever sound the Madagascar one is making will attract other individuals that also make that call. The two groups then undergo their own evolutionary process. Finally, at some point, two distinct species. And yeah, that's why Upupa marginata is usually considered a separate species, while the African population is still considered Upupa epops, because the African population still makes the up sound. which is why the most used classification is the one that put two extant species, Upupa epops and Upupa marginata. The two species do have some subtle morphological differences, so why don't we move on to the morphology section to talk about it? But before that, adult common hoopoe is around 28 centimeters long, with wingspan of around 45 centimeters. Meanwhile, Madagascar hoopoe is slightly bigger, around 32 centimeters long. So yeah, slightly bigger. Both of them have cinnamon-colored plumage with black and white striped wings. Both have cinnamon-colored crests with black tip, which can be raised for display by the way. Both have black tail feathers, and both have thin and relatively long black beak. So now, the question is, what exactly is the difference? Well, first of all, like I said, Madagascar hoopoe is slightly bigger. But not only that, they also have slightly pinkish throat and they have slightly longer tail. Yeah, that's basically it. Which is why I say they have some subtle morphological differences. And that's also why some people are doubtful about them being separated into their own species, because the difference is too subtle, morphologically at least. But I already talked about the different call in the previous section and the thought process behind it. So yeah, Hoopoe has the typical anisodactyl bird feet. Digit 1 pointing backwards, while digit 2, 3, 4 pointing forwards. No webbings, nor any special structure. Their wings are elliptical and relatively short, and if you are not familiar with bird wings types, I did talk about it in this video if you want to learn more. But to put it simply, their morphology hints to the fact that they live in the forest with various vegetations, especially trees, or perhaps in the urban area with a lot of buildings. However, that is not the case for Hoopoe. Not exactly at least. So let's talk about their ecology. Hoopoe typically prefers open area with light vegetation. However, they do still need trees because they nest on tree hollows. They also perch on trees because it's safer there compared to being on the open ground. So, why would they prefer open areas, you might ask? The answer is to forage. They scour the open ground, sometimes even probing their beak into the ground. That's why their diet is mostly composed of ground insects like crickets, mole crickets, beetles, locusts, etc., including insect larvae and pupae. This is also why the northern population typically migrate to the south during winter, because there's barely any ground insects available during the cold winter. And that's also why the African population typically don't migrate, because they don't need to. No such thing as snow covering the ground. And that's also why their breeding season is during the warm summer, because there are tons of ground insects. Hence, nutrients are almost guaranteed to be sufficient. They can be quite territorial, especially during breeding seasons, fighting by stabbing their rivals with their beak. Males will advertise himself to females by performing calls. Some studies showed that long strophes are preferred by females. They typically form a monogamous pair during a breeding season, but could change partner in the next breeding season and so on. Though some extra pair paternity had been observed. Basically means some do quote-unquote cheats on their partner. Though a study showed that males that perform long strophes of call tend to not suffer from extra pair paternity. Basically means all of the hatchlings are his. By the way, this finding also emphasized the fact that vocalizations are so important for their reproductive success, which means that Madagascar hoopoe having a different call from the common hoopoe is indeed a big deal. Anyway, female will lay eggs in their nest inside a tree hole. Apparently, northern population could lay around 12 eggs per clutch, while the one closer to the equator lays around 5 eggs. Some observations also reported that when food is abundant, female can lay extra eggs, in which said eggs are meant to be cannibalized by the other nestlings. This study showed that, by doing so, fledging success rate will increase, hence a more successful reproduction. By the way, I just want to point out that this title is quite something, isn't it? It's certainly catchy at least. Anyway, female will incubate the egg, hence it stays inside the nest. Apparently, they will produce foul-smelling secretion, said to smell like a rotting meat, to deter predator. Meanwhile, the male will bring food for the female. Eggs hatch after 15 to 18 days, And like most birds, the hatchlings are altricial, meaning they are pretty much helpless. Without feathers, cannot see, cannot walk, and of course cannot fly. After 3 to 5 days, feathers will start growing. After around 2 weeks, the mother can start leaving the nest to feed and also helps the male to seek food for the nestlings. After around a month, nestlings will fledge, and a week after that, they will leave the nest and survive by their own. Well, try to survive at least. Nature is still nature, you know? Okay, so I did say hoopoes are considered sacred in some mythos and religions. While I don't exactly know for sure about its cultural relevance, and I'm definitely not an expert on that, at least I know hoopoe is one of the animals that are specifically mentioned in the Quran. I believe Hoopoe is the messenger between Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. This is well known enough that Solomon's Hoopoe even has its own Wikipedia page, by the way. Where I live, which is Indonesia, where the majority are Muslims, you could mention Hoot Hoot and most people would at least have heard of the name, without even knowing it's actually a real bird. I remember back then when I was a university student, me and my friend saw a bird in a cage, and my friend asked me what bird was that. I simply answered, that's Hoopoe pops, and my friend's reaction was basically just, oh, okay. But when I then said, itu burung hoot hoot by the way, which translates into, that's the hoot hoot bird by the way, my friend was like, oh, that's hoot hoot. And yeah, while my friend is not exactly representative of the whole population, I feel like that's how it mostly is, at least in my country. People being familiar with the name Hoot Hoot without ever knowing the real bird. Perhaps not even knowing hoopoes are still quite common in their natural habitat right now. A quick Google search of hoopoe showed me that it is a symbolic bird in many countries, so perhaps we'll learn more about them soon enough. But for now, let's just learn what is known. And that's all for now. Oh, by the way, if you are watching this right around the time it'll be uploaded on my channel, I am scheduled for a surgery in a few days. I'll be hospitalized for a bit, hence no video for next week. Anyway, enjoy your day.